forest, because it was cut out, because we have a new forest here, and none of the trees were planted by man, they're all natural reforestation, that will be a living testimony to what can happen by proper care and attention. When we come into the world, we're rocked in the cradle. We're taught to read and write in schools built from timber. The tables we ate our food off, they were built of wood, and finally we laid the rest in a wooden overcoat. So that literally trees serve man literally from the cradle to the grave, and I'm quite sincere about that. I think they do. Also, the birds, the animals, and indeed all the living things that were here before I came here are still here, and I hope they'll be here for posterity, because I believe that this is their natural habitat, this is their native place, and they have as much right, or even more right, to be here than I have. I'm an intruder. So that my attitude is that these things should be protected for posterity.
This forest is special. It has been harvested and regenerated over the past 40-odd years. One man has been responsible for its management. To that man, Bob Thomas, his 4,000 acres has become a personal commitment to production forestry. Bob Thomas is nearly 80. He was born in Zeehan on the west coast of Tasmania in 1908. He was 9 years old before he had a pair of boots. His father was a timber contractor, using horses to pull logs out of the bush. Bob followed in his footsteps and has worked all his life in forests right around the country. He's hauled logs with bullock teams and rafted hue and pine logs down the wild rivers of the west coast. This forest has been selectively logged for saw logs since early settlement. Bob Thomas has been working here since 1940.
Previous to the war, the ships were bringing in paper into Tasmania from the Baltic states and from North America. But owing to the war conditions and the desperate need for ships to handle troops and supplies for the war effort, the paper wasn't being imported. And the mill at Burnie was, the production from the mill was commandeered by the government. And it was the only fine paper factory anywhere in Australia, and still is, as a matter of fact. And because of that, there was a desperate need to keep a supply of paper. And they sent about 100 blokes home from the army to cut cordwood. It wasn't because we needed timber. There was plenty of timber around, but we didn't have the men, to cut that timber. In Mole Creek, I think there was about 10 in Mole Creek, 10 fellas there. And in different places there were chaps sent to cut pulpwood. I had to allocate jobs for them, and give them contracts and watch what they were doing and so forth. Some of them had been cutting wood before they were listed, before they called up. So that they weren't new chums to the job. Some were pretty hopeless. Glad to get out of the army, I think, and have a free leg out in the forest. I think looking back on it, all that the fellows made out of cutting cordwood, they earned it all. They didn't get it for nothing. If a fellow didn't work, he got nothing.
In those times, pulpwood for papermaking was split into billets and loaded by hand. The stacks of wood produced were measured in cords.
The average would be about 1.5 cords a day. So say 12 days would be 15 cords a fortnight. But 1.5 cords it was a good man who could keep a regular supply of 1.5 cords of pulpwood, and that was per day. And that was a pretty big effort to handle, to fall the tree, cut it up and split it up and stack it. In Tasmania, and on many parts of the mainland, they use a log shoe. That's a plate of steel with a nose turned up and a hole in it for chain to go through, and they put a log on it. And when they snig the log along or drag it along, because it was turned up like a spoon, it would glide up over obstacles. And then when they cut their trees into length, they'd get at one end of them, usually start from the head end if they could, and split it back towards the butt, because a tree splits easier from the head than it does from the butt. And the billets, that'd be the minimum size. We didn't stick to this rigidly, 4 inches diameter and 17 inches maximum. And incidentally, that was a pretty good load to lift. You see, there was a little bloke could find difficulty handling a big log. For a big, strong fellow, there'd be no trouble at all. In this bush, I think we had about, at times there were as many as 8 trucks. They'd do up to 5 trips a day each. And they would load a string of whale wagons, and they'd be picked up every night. And the average load from Deloraine Station would be from 500 to 600 tonnes, up and over a period of about 30 years. Because this was a large area of forest, and the fact that we had good accessible roads, we had lots of men cutting here, up to 50. And some of those men lived a long way from this place, and they wanted accommodation. This hut is typical of the huts we had in our forest.
The 2 days a week Bob spends in the forest now are solitary. But around the hut, the air is still full of memories of a time when the forest rang with axes and the voices of a strangely assorted group of hard-working men.
2 fellows that lived here finally, they actually had a racehorse. And they used to have him out in the paddock out there, in our little paddock, and they'd walk him around the bush here and have him, tied up, and they won the Longford Cup with him, which is truly amazing, I think. Yes. 2 old bachelors. They'd go to Deloraine once every full moon and get well until he tanked up, and they couldn't find their way back up the hill. They run off the road back up.
But Bob's strongest emotions while he's here are not triggered by the memories of the characters and incidents of the past. They are called up by reliving the sounds and the smells and associations of a lifetime spent working in what to him is the most special of all places, the forest.
Over. I might have to pull him out the road a little bit, might I, Bob? Might have pulled him a bit too far. Whoop, yeah. Whoop, yeah. Whooping my Whooping my Go, worry, go, Whoop, yeah. Me, whooping my Me, worry. Worry, worry. Whoop. Be alive. Be alive.
I think that's the clearest place for him to go, the easiest place to
It's
get at him.
necessary that when this tree falls, it's in the same condition as it is when it's standing. That is, it's a solid tree. It's not smashed up over a stone or lodged in another tree.
Bob's knowledge of the art of forestry doesn't just come from the era of axes and crosscut saws. His time in this forest has also seen the development of modern methods: chainsaws, bulldozers, and other machines used up to the time of the last logging here 15 years ago.
This is the back cut of the tree, and it's been done with a chainsaw here, but originally it was done with a crosscut saw with one man on each end of it, and then the wedge was put into the tree to guide the tree exactly where we needed it to go. If you look around where we're standing now, where this tree is being felled, you will notice that the ground is fairly level and reasonably good to get at. In many places in this forest, it's not. It's very inaccessible. So therefore, it's even more important to fall that tree where the wood can be picked up and taken away to its destination. And also that the tree will not damage young regrowth which is growing around it. When we came to this district to get pulpwood, the property owners had no idea how much pulpwood was on an acre. So we had to assess that acre, and the way it was done was this. I'd walk through a forest, keep a straight line for as far as I could see. Then I'd look to the left and look to the right as I walked along and count the number of trees over an area of 5 chains each side of me. That is an area, 10 square chains make an acre. So I'd go to the left for 10 chains and I'd walk back again. And I'd count the trees. In some instances, I'd measure those trees. I'd keep a mental, also a progressive note of what I was doing. After I'd done this for, say, an hour in this area, I'd move to another area in the forest and I'd do the same there. And by doing this backwards and forwards, north and south and east and west, I could get a pretty good picture of how many trees would make so many cords of wood. When we cut this area out for pulpwood, we left about 4 trees per acre, and the idea of leaving those trees was that if a fire came and wiped the forest out, those trees would still seed that acre, and that's happened. Where we're standing now, there's nothing growing but 3 or 4 old stag trees. There's an area of about 100 yards diameter where there's nothing growing at all. If you look at it closely, there's hardly a fern growing. Move away 50 yards in either direction, you'll find the regrowth is quite good. Because we did this, we got this the forest about the one age and the one height and group of trees. You've only got to see them to realise that they're going to be something magnificent in another 10 or 20 years' time.
When it reaches maturity, this forest will produce high-quality timber for sawmilling, as well as pulpwood and timber for other uses.
We're about midway between our bush north and south here, right on our eastern boundary. Over the fence is another man's property, which has not been cut out except for a few trees for posts. But you'll notice that those trees are very old, very badly damaged and diseased by fires and insects and pests. This tree set in front of me here would probably cut maybe 2 or 3 tons of cordwood. I may be even generous in saying there'll be 2 tons of him, because it'll be terribly hard work to recover the wood from that tree by the old methods, splitting by hand, cross-cut saws. But with the modern day methods, I'm quite sure that there could be a bigger recovery of chips from that tree. You'll notice, of course, that there's no regrowth there whatever. Whereas on this side, there's a magnificent regrowth, and that's because the trees were cut out and the ground was disturbed so that the seeds were allowed to germinate and grow. When it was cut out, it did look pretty awful, I'll admit. Very similar to some of the operations that's going on today.
Bob has had the rare opportunity of seeing a forest harvested, burned and resown to grow on towards maturity.
But there you are, that's what can happen. There's no damage to the ground. The trees are 50, 60, up to 100 feet high, extremely healthy, and I'm quite sure that can happen and does happen and will happen in many places where they're cutting the timber out for pulpwood today. When I first saw this forest, I was astounded and indeed shocked to see the damage had been done over a great number of years, how the trees had been decimated with fires. And the reason for that was that the old man who owned the forest used to burn off as regular as he could, once a year at least, because he had a number of sheep running on the bush, and the sheep would eat the new growth down, and of course it helped the old man to survive and live. But the timber had been burned so often and for so long a period that it was in pretty bad state. The trees were old, and we cut what we could out of them. We cut the pulpwood, and then in the heads we cut into firewood. But because we had little trucks to get in and out of the forest, the ground was disturbed and allowed the seeds to germinate. And as you will have noticed, all around us we have a wonderful new forest growing. Behind me I've cut trees down that were a nuisance to the decent-sized and decent quality trees, and also because the good trees are competing against them. Now I want to eliminate the dead, dying and diseased trees that are immediately around me, so the better trees there will also go into timber. The type of forest we have here now is a different forest. It's a new forest. It reminds me of young girls and boys at school growing up tall and handsome. The trees are just like that. They are tall and handsome, and they will be better trees than ever the original forest was, because they're growing up closer together and they haven't been decimated with fires. I've kept the fires out of them, and I hope that that will continue. It's a good forest, and there are plenty of bird life in it, magnificent flora and fauna, and all the things that are part and parcel of this natural habitat. I think that, to me, that's very important, because I think that the animals that live here, that's their natural habitat, and that they've got just as much right to be here as I have. During a dry period about 40 years ago, we had quite a serious fire in our property, about 400 yards away from where we are, but we had a lot of pulpwood stacked. To control that fire, I had to make a trip down here to get an area to cut the fire off. On my way down, I noticed that around one particular tree, the bushes and the ground was painted white. At the first opportunity, when I came back, I had a good look at that area and found that there was an eagle's nest there, and the baby eagles were actually in the nest. I didn't tell anybody about this because I wanted it to be something which belonged to me. September last year, I came down here to look at the nest. I found that the tree had gone, but the eagles had come back, and there's the nest they've built. This will be the second year they've nested in that particular tree. You'll notice that the trees around here are still standing. I wanted this to be, this little gully, to be a place where the birds could nest for posterity. I've kept the fires away from it, and kept the people away from it too. The original nest was so big that I'm quite sure you couldn't have got it in 2 panel vans. It was an enormous nest, and which goes to show that not only do they mate for life, but they keep adding to the nest every year. One of the few people who knows where the nest is a walking club friend of mine. He came down here and he took a picture of the young ones just before they took off to fly. I believe that any real forester, a true forester, a genuine forester, must be a conservationist at heart. And I believe I'm a real conservationist. You've only got to see what I'm doing out there to realise this. When I'm out here, I feel pretty close to God. I think this is part of our natural creation. I think it's very important. I feel there's no pollution. There's no one telling me to do something I don't want to do. I work hard, but I get a great deal of enjoyment out of it. I really do. It does something to me. I feel that I'm open, free, and I'm living in the natural elements where I believe man was designed to live. And, you know, I'm healthy and strong, I suppose, because that I've got a lot to be thankful for. That's how I feel about the forest.